Kate Morrison stood in the massive hall and tried not to shake. Around her, 99 other humans waited for the results. The air smelled like metal and something else she could not name. Fear, maybe. Or just the recycled atmosphere of an alien space station. She was 28 years old and had never expected to be here. Kate was a medic from the Mars colonies, good at her job, but nothing special. She could patch wounds and set broken bones. She knew which medicines worked and which ones would kill you faster than the injury. That was her skill. That was all she had. The Galactic Council had chosen 100 humans to represent Earth in the arena trials. Every species had to do this when they reached a certain level of technology. Win the trials, and your species joined the council as equals. Lose, and your world became property of whoever wanted to claim it. The humans had been competing for 3 weeks now. Combat tests, strategy puzzles, survival challenges in environments that would kill an ordinary person in minutes. Kate had done her best, but she was not a fighter. Not like the others. Lieutenant Jake Harper had won 12 combat matches in a row. Commander Lisa Grant had solved the quantum maze in record time. Even the younger recruits like Megan Price were crushing challenges that should have been impossible for humans. They were making humanity look good. Kate was making humanity look weak. The holographic display flickered to life above them. Numbers and names began scrolling past in a language that the translation implants converted to English. Kate watched. As Jake's name appeared near the top of the human rankings, Lisa was right behind him. One by one, her fellow humans found their places. Kate's name appeared near the bottom. Rank 99 out of 100 humans. Only Ryan Cole ranked lower, and that was because he had broken his leg in the first challenge and could barely walk. The other species had rankings too. The Chromath warriors dominated the top positions. They were 8 feet tall with scales like armor and claws that could tear through steel. Their champion, Warlord Thraz, held the #1 position overall. He had killed 3 opponents in sanctioned duels and completed every challenge with brutal efficiency. Kate had watched one of his fights. It lasted 11 seconds. She had nightmares about it. The hall erupted in noise as species celebrated or mourned their positions. The Chromath warriors roared with pride. A group of insectoid creatures called the Zith clicked and buzzed in what might have been disappointment. The humans were quiet. They had done okay. 12 of them ranked in the top 1,000 overall. But okay was not good enough. Kate felt the stares from her fellow humans. She saw the disappointment in their eyes. She was the weak link, the one who would drag them down. Jake approached her after the rankings were announced. He was a good man, fair and honest. He did not say anything cruel. He did not have to. His expression said everything. "Listen, Kate," he started. "Maybe you could talk to the committee. See if they'll let you withdraw. We have alternates back on Earth who could take your place, someone stronger." Kate nodded. She had been thinking the same thing. "Yeah, maybe I should." Before Jake could respond, the lights in the hall dimmed. A deep tone echoed through the space, vibrating in Kate's chest. The holographic display changed, showing a symbol Kate had never seen before. It looked like a spiral within a circle, glowing with colors that hurt to look at directly. An elder of the Galactic Council appeared on the display. The elders were ancient beings, so old that no one remembered what species they had originally been. They had modified themselves over millions of years until they were more machine than organic. This one appeared as a floating mass of metal and light, with a voice that sounded like grinding stone. "Attention all trial participants," the elder said. "The council has made a decision. This cycle will include the Apex Challenge." The hall went silent. Kate saw fear flash across faces of species she had thought were fearless. Even the Chromath warriors looked uneasy. "What's the Apex Challenge?" Kate whispered to Megan, who stood next to her. Megan's face had gone pale. "I read about it in the archives. It only happens once every 10 cycles. It's supposed to be the ultimate test." The elder continued speaking. "All remaining participants will be transported to the deep territory. You will survive for 10 planetary rotations, form teams, make alliances, gather resources. Those who survive will be ranked based on their accomplishments. The deep territory contains creatures known as the Apex. They are the reason this challenge exists. They are the reason the Crucible was built. The display changed, showing images of a vast wilderness. Dense forests gave way to crystal formations that glittered like diamonds. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks lost in clouds, and scattered. Throughout were glimpses of creatures that made Kate's blood run cold. Massive beings with scales that shimmered with inner light. Bodies that moved like cats but were the size of small ships. Eyes that gleamed with intelligence that was definitely not animal. The Apex Challenge begins in 24 hours, the elder said. Prepare yourselves. Most of you will not survive. The display went dark. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the hall erupted in chaos. Species rushed to form alliances. Warriors checked their weapons. The Chromath began planning their strategy immediately, their voices loud with confidence. Kate stood frozen. She could not fight creatures like that. She could barely fight the smaller predators they had faced in earlier trials. This was suicide. Jake organized the human team quickly. He chose the strongest fighters, the smartest strategists. Kate found herself assigned to his squad along with Lisa, Megan, and 5 others. They were good people. They would do their best to protect her. But Kate knew the truth. In the deep territory, she would be a burden. She would slow them down. She might get them killed. That night, Kate lay in her bunk and stared at the ceiling. Sleep would not come. Her mind kept replaying the images of those creatures. The Apex. Even their name was terrifying. She thought about withdrawing. She could send a message to Earth, request an alternate, someone stronger, faster, better suited for this challenge, someone who was not ranked 99. But something stopped her. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was stubbornness. Her grandmother had always said that Morrison women did not quit, even when quitting was the smart choice. Kate had inherited that trait, for better or worse. She would go to the deep territory. She would do her best. And if she died there, at least she would die trying. The next morning, the teams assembled in the transport bay. Thousands of aliens from dozens of species packed into the massive space. Kate stayed close to Jake and the others. Her medical pack was strapped to her back, heavier than usual. She had requisitioned extra supplies, knowing that in the deep territory, injuries would be common. The Chromath warriors pushed through the crowd, clearing space with casual violence. Warlord Thraz stood at their center, his scales gleaming red and black. He spotted the human group and sneered. "The weak humans," he said in heavily accented English. "You will die first in the deep territory. Your species will be slaves before the month ends." Jake stepped forward, but Kate grabbed his arm. "He's trying to provoke us," she whispered. "Don't give him what he wants." Jake relaxed slightly and nodded. Thraz laughed, a harsh sound like breaking glass, and moved on. The transport ships were massive, each one capable of carrying 1,000 beings. Kate and her squad boarded one along with members of 6 other species. No one talked. The tension was thick enough to cut. As the ship launched, Kate looked out the viewport at the Crucible below. The massive structure glowed against the black of space. Somewhere down there was the deep territory. Somewhere down there were the Apex. Kate closed her eyes and tried to remember her medical training. Stay calm. Assess the situation. Make a plan. Adapt as needed. She could do this. She had to do this. The ship began its descent, and Kate Morrison, ranked 99 out of 100, headed toward the deadliest challenge in galactic history. The transport ship dropped them in the middle of a forest that looked like something from a dream. Trees rose hundreds of feet into the air, their bark shimmering with bioluminescent patterns. The ground was covered in moss that glowed faintly blue when Kate stepped on it. Everything was alive with light and sound and movement. Jake immediately took charge. "We need shelter before nightfall. Lisa, take point. Megan, scan for water sources. Kate, stay in the middle of the group." Kate did not argue. She knew her place. She was here to patch wounds, not to lead. The squad moved through the forest in a tight formation. Every few minutes they heard sounds in the distance, roars, screams, the clash of weapons. Other teams were already fighting, already dying. The Apex Challenge had begun. They found a small cave system by late afternoon. It was not perfect, but it was defensible. Jake and two others secured the perimeter while Kate and Megan gathered supplies. There were plants that looked edible, or at least not immediately poisonous. A stream ran nearby, the water clear and cold. That night, they took turns on watch. Kate drew the third shift from midnight to 3 in the morning. She sat at the cave entrance with a rifle she barely knew how to use and listened to the forest. The sounds were different at night. Softer, more ominous. Something large moved through the trees about 50 yards away. But she could not see what it was. She did not want to see it. On the second day, everything went wrong. They were scouting an area about a mile from their camp when the attack came. Creatures burst from the undergrowth, moving so fast Kate barely saw them. They looked like bears mixed with lizards, with claws made of something that glittered like crystal. "Wren claws," Lisa shouted. "Defensive formation." The squad opened fire. Energy bolts lit up the forest. The wren claws screamed and charged. There were at least a dozen of them, maybe more. They moved like a coordinated pack, splitting the squad's formation with terrifying efficiency. Kate fired her rifle, hitting nothing. The recoil knocked her back. By the time she recovered, chaos had engulfed them. A wren claw slashed at Jake, its crystal claws leaving deep gouges in his armor. Lisa killed 2 with precise shots to their heads. One of the other soldiers, a man named Greg Parker, went down screaming as a wren claw tore into his leg. Kate ran to Greg, sliding in the glowing moss. She pulled him behind a tree and started working on his leg. The wound was bad, arterial bleeding. She had seconds to save him. Her hands moved on autopilot. Pressure on the wound. Sealant foam from her pack. Synthetic skin patch. Pain suppressors. She worked while the battle raged around her, blocking out everything except the injury in front of her. Greg stopped screaming. His breathing steadied. The bleeding stopped. "You're okay," Kate told him. "You're going to be okay." Then something hit the tree next to her head, and she looked up to see a wren claw standing over them. Its mouth was open, showing teeth like broken glass. It raised one clawed paw. The energy bolt took it in the chest. The creature collapsed, dead before it hit the ground. Jake stood 10 feet away, his rifle still raised. "Move," he shouted. "Fall back to the cave," they ran. The squad scattered into the forest, each person taking a different route to avoid giving the wren claws a group target. Kate helped Greg move, half carrying him as they stumbled through the undergrowth. Somewhere behind them, the wren claws gave chase. Kate heard them crashing through the forest. She heard someone scream, cut off suddenly. Not everyone was going to make it back. Kate's lungs burned. Her legs felt like they were made of lead. Greg was heavy and his blood was soaking through her uniform. She could see the cave entrance ahead, maybe 100 yards away. Then her foot caught on a root and she fell. Greg tumbled away from her. Kate hit the ground hard, her rifle flying from her hands. She rolled onto her back and saw a wren claw burst through the trees, heading straight for them. The energy beam came from the cave. Lisa had set up a defensive position and she fired with cold precision. The wren claw jerked and fell, sliding to a stop just feet from Kate. Kate grabbed Greg and dragged him the last few yards to the cave. Lisa covered them the whole way. When they finally made it inside, Kate collapsed against the wall, gasping for air. "Sound off," Jake ordered. "Who made it back?" 5 voices answered. Out of 8 people, 3 were missing. 1 was Greg, injured but alive thanks to Kate's work. The rest were somewhere in the forest, dead or hiding or running. They waited in the cave for 2 hours, weapons trained on the entrance. No one else came back. Finally, Jake made the call. "They're gone. We move at first light, find a new location. This position is compromised." That night, Kate could not sleep. She kept seeing the wren claw's face as it lunged at her. She kept hearing that scream that had been cut short. 3 people dead. 3 people she had eaten breakfast with that morning. At dawn, they packed what they could carry and left the cave. Kate helped Greg walk. His leg was healing, but it would be days before he could move on his own. That made him a liability, which made Kate a liability by extension. She saw the way the others looked at them. Not cruel, just calculating. In the deep territory, sentiment was a luxury they could not afford. They moved south, away from the sounds of fighting. Other teams had claimed the northern territories. The south was supposed to be less populated, which meant fewer competitors but also fewer resources. On the 3rd day since the wren claw attack, they found a river. It was wide and fast, cutting through the forest like a silver snake. Jake decided they would follow it downstream, looking for a defensible position near the water. Kate was refilling her canteen when she heard the sound. It came from deeper in the forest beyond the river, a roar but not like the wren claws. This was deeper, resonant. It vibrated through the ground beneath her feet and seemed to shake the air itself. "Did you hear that?" she asked Megan, who was nearby. Megan nodded, her face pale. "Whatever made that sound is big. Really big." The roar came again, and Kate felt something in it she had not expected. It sounded like pain, like a cry for help disguised as a threat. "We should move away from that sound," Jake said. "Whatever made it is not something we want to meet." The squad turned west, putting distance between themselves and the roar. But an hour later, when they stopped to rest, Kate heard it again. Closer this time, and definitely coming from something in pain. That night, Kate volunteered for first watch. When the others were asleep, she made a decision that went against every bit of training she had received. She left the camp and walked toward the sound. It was stupid. It was suicidal. But Kate was a medic before she was a soldier, and something was hurt out there in the dark. Maybe it was the isolation getting to her. Maybe it was guilt over the people they had lost. Or maybe she was just tired of being useless. She moved through the forest as quietly as she could. The roar came again, guiding her forward. After 20 minutes, she saw light ahead. Not the soft glow of the forest, but something brighter, like a fire. Kate pushed through the last line of trees and stopped dead. There was a crater in the forest floor, easily 50 feet across. Trees had been flattened in a circle around it, as if something massive had fallen from the sky. At the center of the crater lay a creature that should not exist. It was huge, at least 30 feet long from nose to tail. Its body was covered in scales that shimmered with colors Kate had no names for. They shifted as it breathed, creating patterns of light that were almost hypnotic. The creature had 6 legs, currently sprawled out at awkward angles. Its head was both feline and draconic, with 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows, an apex Kate should have run. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around and get as far away as possible. These creatures had killed council enforcers. They had destroyed entire fleets. The deep territory existed because of them. But then the creature moved and Kate saw the wound. A massive gash across its side, oozing fluid that glowed like liquid starlight. One of its legs was bent at an impossible angle, clearly broken. The apex saw her, all 6 eyes focused on Kate, and she felt the weight of its intelligence. This was not an animal. This was a person, aware and thinking and trapped in a broken body. The creature made a sound, softer than the roar but still deep enough to feel. It was not a threat. It was a question. Kate looked at the massive predator. She looked at her medical pack. She thought about Jake and the others back at camp, about how they would call her crazy for what she was about to do. Then she took a step forward, hands raised, medical pack held where the creature could see it. "I'm going to help you," she said quietly. "Please don't eat me." The apex watched her approach. It could have killed her in a second. Instead, it lowered its massive head and closed 4 of its 6 eyes. Kate Morrison, ranked 99 out of 100, began treating the most dangerous creature in the known galaxy. Kate had treated hundreds of patients in her career, humans mostly, but also some animals back on the Mars colonies. She had patched up colonists after accidents and soldiers after combat. She thought she had seen everything. This was different. The apex's physiology was unlike anything in her medical database. Its blood, if that's what the glowing fluid was, did not match any known chemical composition. Its scales were harder than military armor, but somehow flexible. Its internal structure seemed to shift between solid and something else whenever she tried to examine it. But pain was universal. Injury was universal, and Kate knew how to treat both. She started with the leg. It was broken in 3 places, the bones visible through torn flesh. Kate worked carefully, cleaning the wound with antiseptic from her pack. The apex remained perfectly still, only the slight rise and fall of its massive chest showing it was still alive. Kate used every bit of her supplies. Synthetic bone scaffolding to stabilize the break, regenerative gel to promote healing, a brace made from parts of her own equipment, strapped around the leg with cables that were rated to hold a shuttle in place. The leg took 2 hours. By the time she finished, Kate's hands were shaking from exhaustion and adrenaline. The wound on the apex's side was worse. It was deep, cutting through several layers of tissue. Kate recognized the burn pattern around the edges. This was from an energy weapon, probably military grade. Someone had shot this creature and left it to die. She thought about the Chromath warriors and their leader, Warlord Thraz. They were the only team she knew of that would be both brave enough and stupid enough to attack an apex. Kate cleaned the wound as best she could. She used her last tube of regenerative gel, spreading it carefully over the damaged tissue. The apex's scales made it impossible to stitch the wound closed, so she used liquid bandage layer after layer, building up a protective covering. When she finally stepped back, her medical pack was empty. She had used everything. If someone in her squad got injured now, she would have nothing to help them with. The apex opened all 6 eyes and looked at her. Kate felt something pass between them, a moment of understanding that went beyond words. The creature made a sound, a deep rumbling that came from its chest. It took Kate a moment to realize what it was. A purr. The apex was purring. "You're welcome," Kate said, too tired to be afraid anymore. "Try not to move too much for a few days. That leg needs time to heal." The creature shifted slightly, testing the brace. It seemed satisfied. Then it did something Kate did not expect. It stood up. The movement was slow and careful, but the apex managed to get all 6 legs under itself. It was massive, even hunched over from its injuries. Standing at full height, it would have been taller than a 2-story building. The apex looked down at Kate, then nudged her gently with its enormous head. The touch was surprisingly soft, warm against her shoulder. Then it turned and began to walk, moving deeper into the forest. After a few steps, it stopped and looked back at her. Kate understood. It wanted her to follow. Every reasonable part of her brain said no. She should return to her squad. They would be worried about her. Jake would be furious that she had left without permission. She needed to get back before they came looking for her, and found this creature, but Kate had stopped listening to the reasonable part of her brain the moment she decided to help an injured apex. She followed. The creature moved slowly, accommodating its injured leg in Kate's much smaller stride. They traveled through parts of the forest Kate had never seen, places where the bioluminescent plants grew so thick that it was like walking through a river of light. The trees here were ancient, their trunks as wide as small buildings. After an hour, the forest changed. Crystal formations began to appear, growing up from the ground like frozen trees. They caught and reflected light in ways that created rainbow patterns in the air. Some were as tall as the organic trees, creating a hybrid forest of living wood and crystalline structures. Kate realized these formations were not natural. They were too regular, too purposeful in their placement. This was architecture, ancient and overgrown, but still recognizable as something built by intelligent hands. The apex led her through this crystal forest to a clearing where several large structures stood. They looked like buildings if buildings were made entirely of crystal and living vine. Some were partially collapsed, victims of time and weather, but others were intact, doorways dark and mysterious. At the center of the clearing was a den. Kate could see it had been carved from a massive crystal formation. The interior hollowed out to create a space large enough for several apex to shelter comfortably. The creature she had helped, the one she was starting to think of as Ember because of the warm glow of its scales, made a low sound. From inside the den came answering calls, higher pitched and excited. 3 shapes burst from the entrance, moving with the boundless energy of youth. They were smaller than Ember, about the size of large dogs, but clearly the same species. Their scales had not yet developed the full shifting colors of an adult, but they gleamed with promise. Cubs. Kate stood very still as the 3 cubs approached their parent. They chirped and bumped against Ember, clearly happy to see the adult return. Then one by one they noticed Kate. The boldest cub, slightly larger than its siblings, took a step toward her. Its 6 eyes were wide with curiosity. Kate held out her hand slowly, the way she would approach a nervous animal. The cub sniffed her hand, its breath warm and smelling faintly of cinnamon. Then it bumped its head against her palm and made a pleased sound. Kate could not help but smile. Despite being an apex predator, despite being potentially the most dangerous creature in the galaxy, this cub acted like any young animal, curious, playful, trusting. Ember made another sound and the other 2 cubs approached. Soon all 3 were investigating Kate, sniffing her clothes and equipment. clearly fascinated by this strange new creature their parent had brought home. Kate spent the next hour observing the den and its surroundings. She found evidence that this place had once housed dozens of apex. Now it seemed abandoned except for Ember and the cubs. She wondered what had happened to the others. Ember brought her food, strange fruits that grew on some of the organic trees mixed with what looked like synthesized protein bars. Kate was hungry enough to try them. The fruit tasted like mango mixed with mint. The protein had no taste at all but was surprisingly filling. As the day wore on, Kate knew she needed to make a decision. Her squad would be looking for her by now. They would think she was dead or captured. Jake would probably move the camp assuming their position was compromised. But looking at Ember and the three cubs, Kate felt something she had not felt since arriving at the Crucible. She felt useful. Not just useful, but needed. Ember had trusted her with its life. More than that, it had trusted her with its cubs. Kate was not the strongest fighter or the smartest strategist, but she was someone who could help when others could not. That had to count for something. She pulled out her communicator and tried to contact her squad. The device was damaged, probably from when she fell during the Renclaw attack. It could receive signals but could not send. She was effectively cut off from the other humans. Part of her was relieved. Over the next few days, Kate fell into a routine. She checked Ember's wounds every morning and evening, changing bandages and monitoring for infection. The leg was healing faster than should be possible, but Kate was learning that the apex had remarkable regenerative abilities. The cubs adopted her as a second parent. The bold one, which Kate started calling Blaze, followed her everywhere. The other two, which she named Shimmer and Echo, were more cautious but warmed up quickly. They played games that looked like hunting practice, stalking each other through the crystal formations and pouncing with mock ferocity. Kate learned that the apex were not mindless predators. They had a society complex and ancient. Ember showed her carvings in the crystal structures, images that told stories of the apex civilization. They had built the Crucible, Kate realized. This was their home and all the other species were guests. Unwelcome guests who had forgotten or never learned to show proper respect. On the 8th day, everything changed. Kate was helping the cubs practice their climbing skills, spotting them as they scaled a medium-sized crystal formation, when Ember suddenly went rigid. All 6 eyes opened wide, focused on the forest beyond the clearing. The cubs immediately stopped playing and ran to hide behind their parent. Kate felt her heart rate spike. Something was wrong. Ember made a sound, low and urgent. Kate did not speak the language, but she understood the meaning. Danger. Hide. Kate ducked behind a crystal structure and pulled out the small sidearm she had kept from her gear. It was not much, just a standard pistol with 2 spare magazines, but it was better than nothing. Through a gap in the crystals, Kate saw movement in the forest, figures in armor, moving with military precision, at least 20 of them spreading out to surround the clearing. Chromath warriors. Warlord Thraz led them, his red and black scales unmistakable. He was looking directly at Ember, his expression hungry. Kate realized with horror what they were here for. The cubs, apex cubs, would be the ultimate trophy. Whoever brought them back from the deep territory would be guaranteed victory in the challenge. They would be heroes to their people, would gain status beyond measure. Thraz raised a weapon, a massive energy cannon that glowed with building charge. He was aiming at Kate had 2 advantages. The first was that the Chromath did not know she was here. They were focused on Ember and the cubs, not expecting any other threats. The second was that she knew this clearing better than they did. She had spent 8 days exploring every crystal formation, every hidden path, every structure. She was not a warrior, but she was smart. And right now, smart might be enough. Kate moved quickly and quietly, circling around to where the Chromath had positioned 3 warriors as rear guard. They were watching the forest behind them, not expecting an attack from inside the clearing. She pulled one of her 2 grenades from her belt. It was a concussion grenade, designed to stun rather than kill. Kate had kept it for emergencies, figuring it would be useful if they ever got cornered by predators. This qualified as an emergency. Kate pulled the pin and threw the grenade. It arced through the air and landed right between the 3 rear guards. They had half a second to realize what it was before it detonated. The explosion was not loud by military standards, but in the quiet of the clearing, it was like thunder. The 3 Chromath went down, Their armor cracked and their bodies limp. Kate did not wait to see if they were dead. She was already moving to her next position. Thraz roared in anger and confusion. His warriors spun around, trying to find the source of the attack. Kate used their confusion to her advantage. She knew the crystal formations created acoustic dead zones, places where sound bounced strangely and made it hard to locate targets. She fired 3 shots from behind a large crystal, aiming for the joints in Chromath armor. Their scales were natural protection, but the armor they wore had weak points: knees, elbows, the gap between chest plate and helmet. 2 shots missed. The third hit a warrior in the knee and he went down screaming. Kate was already gone, moving to a new position before return fire could find her. Energy bolts scorched the crystal where she had been standing, leaving molten scars in the ancient structure. She had studied Chromath physiology during the early trials. They were strong and fast, but they had weaknesses. Their eyes were sensitive to certain light frequencies. Their hearing was excellent but could be overwhelmed by high-pitched sounds. Their scales provided protection, but made them slower in hot environments. Kate could not make it hot, but she could make it loud. She fired at one of the crystal formations near a group of warriors. The crystal rang like a bell, a pure tone that grew louder as it resonated through the structure. The Chromath clutched their heads, disoriented by the sound. Ember saw what Kate was doing and joined the attack. The apex might have been injured, but it was still a predator. It moved with terrifying speed, its claws extended and crashed into the disoriented warriors. 3 Chromath died in seconds. 2 more were severely wounded, their armor no match for apex talons. But there were still 15 warriors standing, and they were adapting to the situation. They spread out, making themselves harder targets. Some focused on Ember while others searched for Kate. She had 1 grenade left and 4 magazines for her pistol, not enough to fight 15 trained soldiers in direct combat, so she did not fight directly. Kate used the crystal formations like a maze, always staying in motion, never giving them a clear shot. She knew which crystals would ring when hit, which ones would shatter and send razor-sharp fragments flying, which ones were hollow and could hide a person. She led 2 warriors into a trap where a large crystal formation was balanced precariously on smaller supports. 1 shot at the right support, and the entire structure came crashing down, crushing both Chromath beneath tons of crystalline material. She found places where the ground was soft, where running would slow the heavy Chromath down while she could move quickly. She used choke points where only 1 warrior could come through at a time, making their numbers meaningless. Kate had never been a good fighter in straight combat. But this was not straight combat. This was guerrilla warfare, using terrain and intelligence to overcome superior force, and she was very good at it. 10 minutes into the fight, 8 Chromath were down, dead or too injured to continue. The remaining 7, including Thraz, had regrouped in the center of the clearing. They had formed a defensive circle, backs together, weapons facing outward. Kate was breathing hard, her ammunition running low. She had used 3 of her 4 magazines. The last grenade was in her hand, but she was saving it for the right moment. Thraz was shouting orders in his own language. Kate's translator picked up most of it. He was calling for orbital support, for extraction, for reinforcements. But the deep territory had dampening fields that prevented long-range communication. He was on his own, he was scared. Kate could see it in the way he moved, the way his eyes darted around looking for threats. Warlord Thraz, the number 1 ranked competitor, was afraid of a medic who ranked 99. Kate felt a surge of satisfaction, followed immediately by shame. She did not want to enjoy this. She did not want to be a killer. But these warriors had come here to murder Ember and kidnap 3 innocent cubs. They had made their choice. She was making hers. Ember circled the defensive formation looking for an opening. The Chromath kept their weapons trained on the apex, knowing it was the bigger threat. They had forgotten about Kate. That was their mistake. She threw her last grenade, but not at the warriors. She threw it at a massive crystal formation behind them, one she had identified days ago as structurally unstable. The grenade detonated at the base and the entire formation collapsed. Crystal shards flew like shrapnel. The Chromath formation broke as warriors dove for cover. For 3 seconds they were scattered and vulnerable. Ember struck. The apex moved like lightning made solid. Its claws found targets. Its tail whipped around and broke bones. Its jaws closed on armor and crushed it like paper. 4 more warriors went down, that left 3. Thraz and 2 of his personal guards. Kate emerged from cover, her pistol aimed at Thraz. At this range, maybe 20 feet, she could not miss. The Chromath warlord stood frozen, his weapon on the ground where he had dropped it. "It's over," Kate said. Her voice was surprisingly steady. "Leave now and you live. Stay, and you die." Thraz looked at her with his reptilian eyes. She could see him calculating, weighing his options. He was a warrior, trained from birth to fight and conquer. Retreat was shameful. Defeat was unthinkable, but death was permanent. "The cubs," he said in broken English. "They are worth more than my life. My people would honor my sacrifice." "Your people would rather have you alive," Kate said. "And those cubs have a mother who will tear you apart slowly if you take another step toward them." As if to emphasize the point, Ember moved closer. The apex was bleeding from several wounds. Its breathing labored, but its eyes were fixed on Thraz with deadly intent. For a long moment, no one moved. Then one of Thraz's guards spoke urgently in their language. Kate's translator caught words like retreat and orbital strike and come back later. Smart guard. Thraz looked at Kate one more time. "You are ranked 99, he said. "How did you do this?" Kate thought about her answer. She could say something clever, something that would become a legend. But she was too tired for that. "I help people," she said simply. "That's what I do. And these people needed help." Thraz made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been something else. Then he gestured to his remaining guards, and they began backing away toward the forest. "This is not over, human," Thraz called back. "The challenge continues for 2 more days. We will meet again." "I hope not," Kate said honestly. The 3 Chromath disappeared into the forest. Kate waited 5 minutes, making sure they were really gone, before lowering her weapon. Her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. She had just fought and survived a battle against 20 elite warriors. She had won. Ember approached her, moving carefully. The apex was hurt worse than Kate had realized. The fight had reopened some of its wounds and new injuries marked its scales. But it was alive, and so were the cubs. The 3 young apex emerged from where they had been hiding, chirping urgently. They rushed to Ember, checking on their parent with obvious concern. Then Blaze turned and ran to Kate, bumping against her leg with enough force to nearly knock her over. Kate knelt down and put her arms around the cub. It was warm and solid and alive. All 4 of them were alive. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." The roar that answered her did not come from Ember. It came from the forest, from multiple directions at once. Deep, resonant sounds that made the ground tremble and the crystals sing. Other apex were coming. Kate felt a moment of panic before she saw Ember's reaction. The injured apex was not defensive or afraid. It was relieved. It made a calling sound answering the roars. 12 adult apex emerged from the forest. They were all different sizes and colors, their scales shimmering with unique patterns. They approached the clearing carefully, their 6 eyes taking in the scene. The dead Chromath, the damaged crystals, Ember's injuries. Kate standing in the middle of it all. The largest apex, its scales a deep purple-black that seemed to absorb light, approached Kate directly. She stood still, heart pounding, as it lowered its massive head and sniffed her. Its breath smelled like ozone and something sweet. The extraction ships arrived exactly on schedule, descending from orbit with all the grace of falling rocks. Kate watched them land from the edge of the crystal clearing, Blaze sitting beside her like a loyal dog. The other 2 cubs were with Ember, who was resting in the den. The adult apex's wounds had healed remarkably over the past 2 days, but it was still weak. Kate had her communicator working again, sort of. One of the adult apex had shown her a piece of ancient technology buried in the ruins, and somehow it had boosted her signal enough to send a message to her squad. Jake's response had been equal parts relief and anger. "Where the hell have you been?" his message said. "We thought you were dead. Get to extraction point 7 immediately. We leave in 6 hours. Kate had not responded. She did not know what to say. How could she explain the past 10 days? How could she make them understand what she had found here? The answer came in the form of Ember itself. The apex emerged from the den, moving slowly but deliberately. The 3 cubs followed, with Blaze taking the lead as always. Behind them came 5 more adult apex, including the large purple-black one Kate had started thinking of as elder. Ember made a low sound and nudged Kate gently. The meaning was clear. It was time to go. "I don't want to leave you," Kate said. She knew the apex probably did not understand English, but she said it anyway. "You're still healing. The cubs need protection." Elder approached and lowered its massive head until it was level with Kate's. She felt that now familiar sensation of intelligence regarding her, weighing her worth. Then Elder made a rumbling sound that Kate's translator impossibly managed to interpret. "Go. Tell them what you learned. Return when you are ready." Kate stared at the device in shock. The apex had their own language, complex enough that the translator could parse it. That meant they were not animals. They were people, sentient beings with culture and society and communication. The Galactic Council had been lying about them for centuries. Kate looked at Ember one more time. "I'll come back," she promised. "I don't know how, but I'll come back." Then she walked toward the extraction point, accompanied by all 8 apex. Blaze, Shimmer, and Echo walked closest to her, their small bodies pressing against her legs. The adult apex formed a protective circle around them. The extraction point was a natural clearing about 2 miles from the crystal ruins. When Kate and her escort emerged from the forest, she heard the sounds of shock and fear from the assembled competitors. At least 2,000 beings from dozens of species stood in organized groups, waiting for their transport ships. Every single one of them stopped talking when they saw the apex. Kate spotted her squad immediately. Jake, Lisa, Megan, and the others were staring at her with expressions that ranged from relief to disbelief. Greg, the soldier whose leg she had saved during the Renclaw attack, was standing on his own, the wound fully healed. She also saw Warlord Thraz and his 2 remaining guards. The Chromith warlord looked at her with something that might have been respect or might have been hatred. Kate could not tell and did not care. The ships opened their loading ramps and species began boarding. Kate moved toward the human transport, but the cubs would not let her go. They pressed against her, making distressed sounds. Ember made a decision then that surprised everyone. The apex lowered itself until its injured leg folded beneath it, creating a ramp of scales and muscle. The cubs climbed onto their parents' back, settling into position. Then Ember stood and walked toward the transport ship. The human guards at the loading ramp raised their weapons, panicking. Jake shouted at them to stand down. Kate ran forward, putting herself between the guns and the apex. "Don't shoot," she said firmly. "They're with me. Are you insane?" One of the guards said. "That thing is an apex. It'll kill everyone on the ship." "That thing has a name," Kate said, making it up on the spot because Ember deserved better than being called it. "And she saved my life. Multiple times. She's coming with us, and so are her cubs." Lisa pushed through the crowd. "Kate, what happened out there? Where have you been?" "I'll explain everything," Kate promised. "But right now we need to board. The ships leave in 20 minutes. The standoff might have continued, but Elder made a sound that cut through all arguments. It was not loud, but it carried authority that every species present recognized on an instinct level. The sound of a leader giving an order. The other apex began walking toward different transport ships. Not threatening, just walking calmly up the ramps and settling into cargo spaces. They moved with purpose, as if they had planned this. Within 5 minutes, every transport ship had at least 1 adult apex and often several cubs. The species on board were terrified, but the apex simply settled down and waited, as calm as house cats. The Galactic Council observers on the ground were frantically communicating with their superiors. Kate could hear bits of the conversation through her translator. "The apex are boarding the ships. We cannot stop them without destroying the transports. Request instructions." "Repeat, request instructions." Kate boarded the human transport with Ember and the 3 cubs. The rest of her squad followed, though they kept their distance from the apex. The ship lifted off with no ceremony, leaving the deep territory behind. The flight to the main Crucible station took 3 hours. Kate spent the time with Ember, checking wounds and making sure the cubs were comfortable in the strange environment. Blaze adapted quickly, exploring the cargo hold with fearless curiosity. Shimmer and Echo stayed close to their parent, nervous but trusting. When the ships docked at the station, chaos erupted. The Galactic Council had not anticipated Apex leaving the deep territory. Their security protocols did not cover this scenario. Armed guards filled the docking bays, but they did not shoot. The Apex had made no threatening moves, had not harmed any of the competitors on the transports. Kate and the other survivors were herded into a massive assembly hall. The apex came with them, forming a protective ring around the humans and a few other species who had apparently made similar connections during the challenge. The council elders appeared on holographic displays, their ancient faces showing confusion and concern. One of them, a being made more of light than matter, spoke in a voice like grinding stones. "This is unprecedented. The apex have never left the deep territory. Explain what has occurred." Kate found herself pushed forward by her squad. She was still ranked 99. She was still the weakest fighter. But she was the one the apex had chosen, so she was the one who needed to speak. "The apex aren't what you've told us," Kate said. Her voice was small in the huge hall, but the audio system amplified it. "They're not mindless predators. They're people. They have language, culture, families. They built this place." The council elders' expression did not change. "The apex are dangerous creatures that must be contained. This has been known for millennia." "No," Kate said, and she felt Ember move closer behind her, supporting her. "That's what you chose to believe. But I spent 10 days with them. I healed one when it was injured. I protected its cubs, and in return they protected me. They saved my life." She pulled out her medical scanner and displayed Ember's readings. "Look at these scans. Complex language centers, tool-using capability, social bonding structures. These aren't animals. They're a civilization." Thraz stepped forward from where the Chromath were grouped. Kate tensed, but the warlord did not look aggressive. He looked defeated. "The human speaks truth," Thraz said. "My warriors attacked an apex and its young. We believed we were hunting prey. Instead, we found a mother defending its children. The human ranked 99 drove us away with tactics and courage. She fought for the apex family as if it were her own." The hall erupted in noise, species arguing, shouting, demanding answers. The council elders tried to restore order, but the situation was spiraling beyond their control. Then Elder, the purple-black apex, moved to the center of the hall. All the other apex followed, forming a circle around the council's holographic displays. The noise died immediately, replaced by primal fear. Elder made a sound, and this time Kate's translator caught every word. "We are the first people. We built the crucible to test the younger species to see if they were worthy of the stars. Over time, you forgot why the trials existed. You used them to conquer and subjugate. You called us monsters to justify keeping us imprisoned." The council elder tried to interrupt, but Elder continued, its voice overriding the communication system. "We have watched humanity. They are weak in combat. Their technology is primitive. By your metrics, they are failures." Kate felt her heart sink. This was it. Humanity was going to be rejected, made into slaves or worse. But they have something the rest of you have lost. They have compassion. When they found one of us injured, they did not see an opportunity to exploit. They saw someone in pain and chose to help. That is the test. That is what the trials were always meant to measure. Elder turned its 6 eyes on Kate. "This one, ranked 99, showed more worth than all your greatest warriors. She will speak for her people in the council, and we will emerge from the deep territory to ensure the trials return to their true purpose." The implications of Elder's words settled over the hall like a heavy blanket. The apex were rejoining galactic society. The balance of power had just shifted dramatically. The council had no choice but to accept.